Thank you all so much for joining us for our webinar today. Um, we are going to be talking about community-centered design in education. My name is Laura Bernhard. I'm a senior researcher at California Competes, and today we're exploring how San Jose City College partnered with community orgs to reimagine educational pathways. This work represents a fundamental shift from designing for communities to designing with the communities. And over the course of the next hour, we're going to dig into some of our findings and recommendations from this work, and then have a panel discussion with some of the leaders shaping the field, leaving time at the end to answer your questions. A couple of housekeeping notes. I'm sure as you heard when you joined, this session is being recorded. It will be shared out afterwards. And please feel free to use the Q&A box to share your questions throughout. So before we dive in, we wanted to understand who is joining us today. Please take a minute to respond. We'd love to know what sector you represent. If you answer other, we'd love to see that and know more. If you are in higher ed, how would you describe your role? And then to what extent is your institution or organization currently engaging in collaboration with your local community? Okay, we've got some results coming in. It looks like pretty good mixture, high representation from our college folks. We've got staff and counselors and instructional faculty, and then just like a range of engagement with community orgs. So that's great. Thank you all so much for being here. So a quick overview of how we're going to spend our time together. I'm going to do a quick project background and some key findings. Then I'll introduce our three panelists, and we'll have a discussion. And then we'll take your questions as they come in. So again, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A as they come to you. I wanted to take a minute to introduce our organization. If you are not familiar with us, we are California Competes, Higher Education for a Strong Economy. We are a nonpartisan research and policy organization, and we really focus on the intersection of higher ed, equity, and economic opportunity. And this project reflects our commitment to understanding what works and sharing those insights broadly. Our work spans multiple priorities around equitable access and economic mobility. And this project really touches on several of these areas, particularly the workforce pathways and community partnerships that increase access and success for adult learners. The background of this project is really a statewide picture. So California faces both a challenge and an opportunity. We have a projected shortfall of 2 million workers, college-educated workers, and we also have 6.8 million adults who have stopped their education after high school. And East San Jose, which is the community we're going to be talking about today, really represents a microcosm of this broader challenge. And the question is, how do we reach these adult learners effectively? East San Jose is a vibrant, diverse, multilingual community. It is 57% Latinx and 31% Asian. 75% of residents speak a language other than English at home. 55% have high school diploma or less. And there are larger households in this community, and not necessarily because there are more children, but likely a reflection of the high cost of living. And so this demographic reality really affirms for us why we wanted to do a community-centered design approach. A little bit about San Jose City College, our partner in this work. They serve nearly 15,000 students who roughly mirror the community. 55% women, 50% Latinx, 28% Asian students, 48% are first generation college students, and 42% are adult learners, which are the students we're talking about today. Our research is captured in this brief, available at the link and QR code shown here. It provides a comprehensive look at the process, findings, and recommendations from our research. I encourage you to download it and explore the details after today's session. And we're also putting links into the chat here. So we had two interconnected goals for this work. The first was to create a college model tailored to residents' actual needs and realities and not based solely on institutional assumptions. And our second was to strengthen the research policy practice partnership between the college and the local community organizations that serve East San Jose. And the goals are really mutually reinforcing. Authentic community partnerships enable better program design and vice versa. And what have we done so far? So over the last year, we've used a multi-method approach to really engage the community. We have done over 50 interviews, deep one-on-one conversations with key college staff and community leaders. We've done listening sessions, broader community gatherings to hear diverse voices and perspectives. And then we've also done some design thinking workshops, which were collaborative sessions with both community members and our lead design team of faculty and staff from the college to really co-create solutions. Each method served a different purpose and built on the others. And I think what's really important is this wasn't a one-time consultation. It was really an ongoing dialogue with the community. If you are unfamiliar with design thinking, I just wanted to provide a quick overview. It's a human-centered approach to problem solving. It starts with empathy, so deeply understanding people's real experiences, and then moves through defining, ideating, prototyping, and testing solutions. And what's key here is that it's not iterative. It is iterative. It's not linear. So you learn and adjust and improve as you go. And crucially, it involves the people you're designing for as partners in the design so that you're not doing something for them, but with them. Engaging in this process really allowed us to center residents' needs. So we let the community voices drive decisions, not institutional preference. We made data-informed decisions, collaborating or based on actual community input and not assumptions. And then we collaborated with campus and community partners in an authentic way and really working on building real reciprocal relationships. From this work, we have come out with 4 key recommendations. So first is to involve local communities in program design from the very start and not as an afterthought or for validation after decisions are made. Building cross-sector partnerships. Colleges can't do this alone. Partnering with community organizations, employers, and other institutions are essential. Designing complete educational pathways. So not individual courses or programs, but really thinking about where students are and where they want to work and thinking and going through that whole path. And then also establishing iterative feedback loops. So continuous learning and adjustment based on what's working and what's not. We see these not as just nice to haves, but as essential for creating programs that truly serve the community. So that's a quick overview of the project and what we learned. And again, we invite you to download our latest publication. And then I'm going to bring in our 3 panelists who can speak to this work from different perspectives. Each brings unique expertise and insight into what it takes to do this work well. And so let me introduce our panelists. First, Dr. Rowena Tomaning is the Deputy Chancellor for the California Community Colleges, where she advances Vision 2030, the system's strategic plan focused on student success and college effectiveness. What's particularly valuable is that before this system level role, Rowena served as president of San Jose City College and was the person who originally invited us to work with the college on this project. She can speak to both the vision and the practical realities of making this work happen. And she loves a good coastal hike. Next is Jose Murillo, who is the Director of Place-Based Initiatives at Amigos de Guadalupe and leads the Neighborhood Prosperity Project, a 10-year plan to end concentrated poverty. Over the last year, his first program, Echo in Mayfair, has redirected more than $500,000 in revenue to local entrepreneurs, demonstrating what neighborhood-led prosperity can achieve. Amigos de Guadalupe has deep roots in East San Jose, and Jose brings the essential community partner perspective, the voice of those who know this community most intimately and who are critical to making this kind of work authentic and effective. He has been a valued thought partner throughout this project for us, and fun fact, he is training for a half Ironman relay with his friends. And finally, Dr. Joyce Louie is the Executive Director of Institutional Effectiveness and Educational Services at San Jose Evergreen Community College District. Before this role, Joyce served as Dean of Research, Planning, and Institutional Effectiveness at San Jose City College, where she led the strategic planning, research, and governance that made this project possible. Joyce was deeply involved in the design thinking workshops, served as my main contact at the college throughout our research together, and can really speak to both the insights that emerged and the realities of doing this kind of work within an institution. And her fun fact is that she's been to over 60 countries, so you can get all of your fun holiday travel recs from her. I'm excited to have this conversation with all three of you, and so let's dive in. Oh, this would require me to stop sharing. There we go. Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I wanted to start off with a foundational question for all three of you. From your unique perspective and role, why do you believe in this work? Why is community engagement, truly authentic community engagement, so important? Let's start with you, Rowena.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I do want to give a shout out to California Competes again in your team for the partnership and engaging with San Jose City College on this very important project. So thank you again. So for this question, I wanted to just say that I do believe that this work is very critical. Authentic community engagement is core to who we are as the California community colleges. Our Vision 2030 goals emphasizes working collaboratively with our communities to co-design solutions that reflect their lived experiences and aspirations. And that is in line with one of our key spheres of engagement in terms of leveraging all of the talents and the knowledge and the experiences of people within our system and then also external through partnerships. I also want to say that when we do listen deeply and we invite our communities into the design of the pathway works that we do, our programs, and then also the different supports that we try to put in place, we do gain insight into their goals and their specific challenges. And that helps us really tailor and offer a variety of options. I think of supports versus trying to design a one size fits all model. Authentic engagement also is how I believe we can close equity gaps. When communities shape the work we do, we reach more learners and we see outcomes that are culturally grounded, relevant, and sustainable. And this is really critical because we know that California as a state is one of the most diverse states in the nation. And our demographics keeps growing, and we serve a variety of communities in the state. So I'll go ahead and stop there.
Thank you. Joyce, do you want to hop in?
I also want to mention that at San Jose City College, a lot of our plans center on community partnership. In our educational master plan and our strategic plans, we really hone in on ensuring that we have a connection to our community. And so much of our work is centered on making sure our students have formal connections to the community, such as internships and workforce connections. But we didn't want to limit it to just that. We really wanted to see our students be part of the community. And also, we didn't necessarily feel like the community connections is simply just on the workforce side. We also wanted the rest of the college to also be connected to the community. And so, in looking at community engagement, we felt like it was a broader definition than simply work and internships. And for the truly authentic community engagement piece, I think that for anyone who works at a community college, um, I don't think any of us envision our work simply as emails and meetings and I think all of us feel like we wanted to work at a community college to be in community. And therefore, so much of this work is truly about being in community at a community college. And lastly, I think that all of our students come from the local community. And so to know our students is to build authentic community. And so that's the only way for us to actually know where our students come from and so to better serve them means to get to know our community.
Thank you. Jose.
Thank you for having me. I'm feeling a bit cold right now, so my voice is a bit
It's
cracked.
okay.
Um, I think for me, what I appreciate about the work that would happen here, it was the fact that community and place work together. Oftentimes, we try to design programs that try to do a one size fits all, and ignore the local realities of what's happening on the ground in our neighborhoods. And so when I was when I was part of this program and I heard it was focused on East San Jose, I really appreciated that fact, the fact that it was really hyper focused on a part of the neighborhood. Because every part of San Jose or the county is different, right? Poverty or the issues our families are facing in East San Jose are different than the ones that are faced in Gilroy or Morgan Hill or different pockets of this county. And so it's super important that we focus on place and where we're going to be doing our work because it also helps us deal with assumptions, right? As we are trying to do our work, we have some certain assumptions about certain locations, right? We have assumptions around transportation needs, around language access, around different pieces like that. And when you are focused on place, you're able to then figure out if those assumptions are actually true or not, or if we're just or if we're just assuming things that are not actually factual. So I really appreciate the fact that it's place-based. That's what really brought me into this work.
Thank you. So, Rowena, I mentioned earlier that you were sort of the visionary for this project as the president, and in that time, you are now at the chancellor's office. And so, I wonder, from your system level perspective, what is your vision for how community colleges should interact with their communities, and how do we interact with the broader community beyond the current student population?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think from a system level perspective, I see our community colleges as both civic and economic anchors for their regions. Our responsibility also extends well beyond those currently enrolled. You know, as both Joyce and Jose mentioned as well, the work that we do within our colleges has an impact external to our colleges in the broader community. And I know that for community colleges, really addressing affordability and basic needs goals across the state, that the work that we do system wide can impact what we see as generational poverty across our regions and our on the ground, our local communities, you know, are working to address that as well. I also wanted to share that our Vision 2030 goals, which are our system goals, to increase with equity student access, to increase with equity student support, and to increase with equity student success across the state, that our goals remind us that learning occurs across a lifetime. Our colleges are places where adult learners, returning students, displaced workers, parents, veterans, and historically underserved residents feel seen, welcomed, and supported. So when we think of Vision 2030, and my specific vision is that I do see colleges engaging communities as partners actively and not just in a transactional way, but in a transformative way, that we understand what the mutual benefits are for our system and for our communities in shaping what comes next. So, this to me means listening with intention and co designing solutions that lift regional prosperity. This means collaboration on areas like workforce pathways, dual enrollment, basic needs infrastructure. And I think folks that are familiar with the California community colleges and Vision 2030 know that we have certainly doubled down on credit for prior learning in our system, all of which recognize the full spectrum of learners' experiences. So there's certainly plenty more to share in terms of the system-wide perspective on these types of collaborations and why they're critical to advancing our Vision 2030 goals. But I'll go ahead and stop there.
Thank you. Joyce, I imagine that many of the staff and faculty who are at colleges across the state are curious to know sort of like what did engaging in design thinking mean? So maybe you can share from your perspective, was there anything that you learned from the workshops, anything that surprised you, anything that emerged for you that is different from how you would normally go about standing up a new program?
I think one of the things that about design thinking workshops that was wonderful is a lot of times we have what I like to call PowerPoint shows where we invite partners and we do PowerPoint shows where we say, this is who you are as a college. We're so glad you're here. We do a PowerPoint show for them. We invite them for a breakfast or a lunch. We have a great meal together. We thank them for their time. We give them a swag bag and they go about their day and we take a couple of pictures, which is a great event. And I think design thinking workshops kind of flips everything. Design thinking workshops really break some of those rules. There's no PowerPoint. We are sitting in small groups. And what it is amazing is it creates a framework for everyone to come together at equal footing. There isn't an agenda per se. We have a facilitator coming in, a neutral party. So there's no expert learner per se. All of us are coming in with our own knowledge base. So I may know the piece about the college, but Jose is coming in with all of his knowledge about the community. And so we're just sharing knowledge with one another and sharing assumptions. And also, I would say some of the past and some of the hurt feelings that we've had. And I think that that was some of the most powerful pieces of acknowledging that the college and the community partners, we may have missed one another in previous interactions. And I think that's really powerful to acknowledge that we may not have always served one another in the best possible way. So let's acknowledge that. And how do we move forward in a more authentic way instead of just having these slide deck shows with one another or that one meeting with one another? And also, design thinking workshops start with we're going to meet at least 3 times in a year. And so, you will be working with these partners at set intervals with set outcomes. And I think that is also really powerful with a set date and a set time with certain goals and that we are trying to reach together. And so I think that is one of the things that is also surprising, that not all partners are ready, not all community college administrators are ready. And so it does take a certain amount of open-mindedness to do this amount of work. And I thought that certain administrators would be really excited for this work, and some of them were not. And I thought there's certain community partners would be really excited about this work, and some of them really were. But because of time commitments, they could not make it. And so it is a commitment on both sides to do design thinking workshop. And so I think that is a surprising part, the time commitment it takes, because some of these workshops are half a day. If not, it takes up a lot more time than I think we anticipated. So that's been the surprising piece, the time commitment and owning, I would say, previous misconceptions of one another.
Thank you for that. I don't want to like diminish time commitment. I think that is like a huge investment on people's part. Beyond time, do you feel like there were a lot of resources? Like, is this a process that you think can be like scaled up or scaled down to meet different community college needs?
I think so. I think that it could be scaled down in time, but not in the number of visits. I
Hmm.
still think there should be a set number of visits throughout the year so that people understand that it is a long-term commitment for the year. So whether it's 3 times in a year or 4 times in a year, and you meet for an hour or 2 hours in those 3 or 4 visits, but I would still spread out the visits so that people understand that this is a long-term commitment and not a one-time visit. Because I think previous partnerships felt like one-time visits, and therefore you did not necessarily build the relationships and did not really deeply commit to that authentic relationship. It really is that duration of 1 year of consistently seeing someone and having a deeper understanding of these partnerships and these community groups that I think led to these deeper conversations and deeper understanding of one another.
Sure.
Laura, can I add something just super quickly?
Please.
Because what Joyce just said just really resonates with me, and it's this value of consistency in building the relationships. Because if we're building transformational, authentic relationships, then you do need consistency to do that. And when you have that level of consistency, then you really understand each other and you understand what the challenges are, and empathy happens, with that understanding. And then also, trust is something that happens over time. It doesn't just happen with, like the scenario that Joyce said, that often happens within our institutions where you have these one-time invitations and we expect communities to come to us all the time onto our campuses versus meeting them where they are, to facilitate, breaking down some of those barriers and challenges. And that's something that I learned early on, even when I was a faculty member, at one of the nearby colleges in terms of partnership development, that it was really important that we have the privilege of time. I think we do, within our institutions. Uh, and we shouldn't expect that there's all of this flexibility, with our community partners, especially community partners that, have their additional responsibilities, to take care of beyond just their own nonprofit organization.
Thank you. Okay, it's teed it up perfectly for Jose. Um, so Jose, I think when we talk about community partnerships and co-designing, it can often feel like buzzwords that don't mean much. So I think centering you as someone working daily with community members, what does it mean for colleges and organizations to really be true partners in this kind of work? And how can we responsibly incorporate community members so that they're not just consulted, but genuinely empowered in the process?
think going on to Joyce's point earlier about being let down, I think part of it is being honest with our community around what can and cannot be possible. Oftentimes we feel like we have to um, have all the solutions, or we feel that um, we don't want to say certain things. We don't want to. I'll give an example, right? So for when we were working on this pipeline, right, from on ramp to off ramping, we were trying to make the program really accessible to folks, right? Making sure we were thinking about folks' needs around yes, English, needs around um, transportation, a bunch of different components to it. And as I think the smart thing about this program was thinking about also the off-ramping piece, right? How do we engage with employers? And then when we started talking to employers, they were saying, we need, for example, that the person has to have a high school education. We need folks to be able to work in the United States. And I think sometimes are not that transparent with our community around the needs at the very end. And so our folks are led through this process, right? They believe that they can make a change. They believe that they can that this program will be meant for them. And then they find out at the very end that the program cannot support them because they don't have the necessary things of the off ramping, which is not the part of the community college, but it is part of this whole broader puzzle. And so I think just being really honest with the community up front and saying, here's the things that we can accomplish, these things we are limited by, right? So that our community can make decisions for themselves, right? If we're not transparent with our community, if we don't have that authentic engagement community and are transparent, our community is going to feel let down again, and it makes it harder and harder to be consistently engaging with higher education, right? If um, you're brought into this process and helping design programs, telling you that anything is possible, and then at the very end, it's like this is a clear, like, we want to support our community, like everyone here wants to support our community, but there are certain things, like for example, immigration reform that would have to happen for us to be able to support them in that particular way. We have to be transparent and honest with folks.
Thank you. So Joyce, earlier you mentioned that some people might be more ready to do the work, and some people, I think, were less ready to have a seat at the table. Obviously, engaging in this kind of work requires buy-in from faculty, staff, administrators. How do you think we can build that buy-in, especially from people who might be skeptical?
So, from the very beginning, when Rowena was our president, she introduced it at an all managers meeting. And so that introduction from the leadership, right, that started the buy-in. And then I think the second thing we did was I think Laura and I, we walked around campus. I think I introduced you to every person I could see within 5 feet. Pretty much, I was like, this is Laura. She's from California Competes. Remember that presentation our president did at the all managers meeting? To try to connect everyone to the idea that California Competes will be on campus. Now, you may or may not be part of the design thinking workshop, but you will hear about it. And for those who are actually participating in the design thinking workshop, it's connected to that presentation our president did at the all managers meeting. Now, once again, you may not remember that presentation, right? And it's so this multi-layer piece of connecting it, not just to the leadership presentation, but also to a person. And then once I connected it to Laura and California Competes, I also connected it to the community partners because different administrators have different relationships with individual partners. And so it really became the spider web of connections. And then also, I would say I leveraged my own relationships on campus to really leverage as much as I could and connected this project to, oh, remember you had this idea of wanting to go out more into the community and reminding everyone of their own passion projects. And so once you connect it in so many different ways, it really was just a reminder of why we're all at work. Once again, not for emails, not for meetings, not to write our reports, not for any of that, right? It's to serve our students, it's to be in the community and be in community with each other. And certainly it can be challenging, especially with leadership changes, but it's also important to tie it back to our strategic plans, our educational master plans, And as Rowena alluded to, even our statewide plans. And so it's at the forefront of everyone's goals. And also, once again, it is connected to our work. It's not separate. It's very much connected to what we're trying to do, which is increase student success and student access. And at its core, that's what we're all trying to do. And so I think sometimes it's just breaking it down to it's not just another project, but it's connected to the core of who we are. And once we do that, and once people are reminded of the people that they've met and they really like, everything feels a little bit easier. And I've said this, Laura, when you email me, I'll respond to you as soon as I can. And so once you build that connection, once you have a relationship with partners, it feels very authentic. So why wouldn't I continue this work? Why wouldn't I continue this project? And it really is that straightforward and that simple.
It's true. The short answer is find a Joyce at every there are Joyces at every campus, and you just have to find them and make them your key project partner. That's my key to success. Um, I wanted to sort of jump over to some of our audience questions because we've got some great ones that we've touched on a little bit, but so I think Joyce and Jose have both acknowledged sort of bringing to the forefront like where we've perhaps fallen short in our previous outreach and partnership opportunities. And we have someone who asked like, yes, we have indeed missed opportunities with community partners. How do we rectify that disconnect? Can you provide examples? I think Jose, you offered one of just being like upfront with expectations and requirements. Do you have any other advice that you'd like to give?
I think the second thing I would offer is that to engage with community members outside of the program, right? It's not necessarily like we have a program design idea and we need some community members to be engaged in that process. I think that's very transactional. So thinking about how you can engage community outside of those program design workshops, for example. So maybe it's getting to know your local community partners when there's no ask you're making of them. Like for example, if you get to know local nonprofits like Amigos Guadalupe or Somos Mayfairs, the Collective, just in general, just who we are, get to build relationships with us. I think that's just really important because oftentimes sometimes we just feel like we're asked for a lot of things. So when people come to us, it's not they're not asking for something. They're asking for our time. They just want to get to know how they can support us and the work that we're doing. The work that we're doing. I think that creates a more authentic relationship.
Show up, don't ask for anything, show up consistently, build trust. Fantastic. Um, Marina, maybe this is a question that I think you could speak to. Someone asks, what is needed to ensure that these solutions don't just get piloted, but can be sustained long term?
Yeah, let me try that one. I think in terms of sustaining pilots, because I am an advocate of pilots, if we're going to be using pilots effectively in the sense of identifying, what opportunities are arising from the pilots, what is infrastructure work that needs to happen and that you can move towards sustainability. And then I'll go back to something that I said earlier is part of what we're doing with Vision 2030 and our version of the pilots, which we call our demonstration projects, is that each of those demonstration projects is engaging with people and partners, engaging with resources, potential resources, identifying resources, working towards increasing resources. And then also, we're delving into the policy pieces to think of sustainability if we're going to bring it up to scale. So, what I want to go back to, I think, in response is if we use design thinking initially to begin the partnership work that needs to happen, and then also identifying what are the clear outcomes from our partners, and then also from the work that we want to do with the institutions to serve our students. And really, in the end, it's about improving their lives and improving community lives, right? So I think that level of intentionality and thinking from the get-go too, we need to be thinking of scale. We need to be thinking of where are maybe some of the shortfalls in resources, and then also what structural changes need to be addressed. I think that can move us from the pilot phase, to a sustainable model. So, I mean, and that's just, from my vantage point, like starting to really work at a system level with these demonstration projects. But again, I'll go back to at the core is ensuring that our relationships are strong and that we've built the trust with our partners and that our partners are that we both are authentically engaging in advancing the efforts, whether it's a project or it's a program that we decide that we're going to move towards, and making those commitments.
Thank you. Um, we had an audience question about how did we get employers to take us up on the opportunity to attend design thinking workshops. Um, I'll take a quick stab at that, and if anyone else wants to hop in, I would say similar to the discussions about um, our partnerships with the campus's partnerships with community organizations. I think you just start off by talking to folks and not leading with an ask, like relationships first. I think we cast a wide net. We met with people multiple times before we asked for their time to come. And I think by that time we had sort of planted the seed of interest, like intrigue, and also that we're really trying to solve a problem for them. They need workers. They would like them to be trained and educated and certified. Um, and and like this is a great opportunity for them to have a say in how those folks are developed. And so I think it wasn't a big ask. And I would also say, like, try going to both sides of the spectrum. Large employers will often have staff who are dedicated recruiters, and so that is their job to come out and find um, new staff to develop, and also small businesses because they're highly invested. They might be embedded in the community, and they're really wanting to see folks from their own community. So I think sort of casting a wide net and then spending a little bit of time. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything about working with employers.
Yeah, I can add to that as well. I
Yeah.
think you don't need to have 20, 30 employers. Like we only had one or two employers in the group, and that was helpful just to figure out what their process was for the off-ramping. So I don't think don't be intimidated by the fact that you have to have employers. You should have employers, but we're not asked, it's not a big number that you have to get that valuable insight.
One thing I also wanted to flag, I just wanted to acknowledge that one of the challenges we dealt with in the project was multiple leadership changes. I think it is something that will happen often over the course of a longer term project. And so I wanted to see if Joyce wanted to hop in from your perspective. How can we, as partner orgs and community orgs, how can we ensure that these projects are sustained through personnel transitions?
I think that within the California Community College system, there are leadership changes throughout, but I think that the work that is being done is so important that I think once the work begins, that I think the work sustains itself because it is important. In particular, it's important to note that the workshops are attended by multiple administrators. I think at any given workshop, there were at least 5 to 7 administrators at various levels. And so certainly I'm sitting here on this panel, but there were other deans, directors, and as well as VPs were invited. And so I think that that work is sustained by others. And so when so many administrators are at the table, that work can be sustained through them. And one of the ways is also to ensure that the relationships with partners like California Competes and with our nonprofit partners is that every single time we meet, we're actually sitting in different groups. We are not sitting at the same groups. We are not talking to the same partners. We are not talking to the same people over and over again. Every single time we meet, we are actually getting to know different people. And so every single time we do this, it does feel very exciting to talk to someone new. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of the design thinking workshops is I walk away thinking, why haven't we been doing this for 20 years at our community college? We should have been doing this for 20 years. And the other piece is I just got to know someone who does amazing work in our community, and I already have 20 other ideas. It's a matter of prioritizing and bandwidth, and let me think this through. How should I do this without throwing myself into other 20 more projects? But the exciting part is my colleagues feel the same way. And so the work does sustain itself through that excitement. It is about prioritizing and making sure that we don't burn any bridges with our partners, obviously. But I do think the work can sustain itself. Obviously, the partnerships look different for each person, and I do want to acknowledge that. I'm sure Laura can speak to it. It certainly there was a change when I transitioned from my role from the college to the district, but at the same time, I only transitioned from the college to the district. Laura and I still communicate at any point. If she has any questions, I continue to respond to any questions she has. And at the same time, the people at the college are still interested in continuing this project.
It is true. We love working with San Jose City College. As we wrap up, maybe what is one piece of advice that you would give to a college or a community organization that wants to try this approach? Maybe something that is crucial to get right. Anyone can start.
I can start. Um, just to, I'm going to give two pieces of advice that people often forget. One is, as you think about where you're going to host your meetings at, where you're going to meet with community, I think make sure it's in the neighborhood that you're serving, right? Don't. I think oftentimes we feel comfortable in our administrative offices or on the campus itself, but really try to push yourself out of your comfort zone and move in, have your meetings in East San Jose or wherever your place is at. Second thing is around payment for community members who are taking time off from their work or taking vacation days to be able to attend those co-design meetings. I think just thinking about how we can provide some sort of small payment to them because for us, we're blessed that we're in a place where we can move things around our schedule, but we're not taking PTO or vacation days to be part of this co-design as staff members of higher ed or nonprofits. But for our community members who are, we have to be equitable as well and think about how we put some money aside for them.
Thank you, Jose.
I can go next, and I wanted to just maybe follow up on Jose's practical advice because I think part of also what he's saying around the seeking out some compensation for community partners is about valuing their time and their lived experience. So we have our time and our lived experience in terms of our professional lives within the institution. And part of our work is compensated in terms of developing and working with our community and our industry partners. But it's not the same with our community-based organizations and nonprofits. So I really value that piece of advice, Jose. And then I think I just want to again emphasize that the most effective solutions come from empathy and trust. And so, really making the commitment to build the relationship with our partners and understand what their needs are, and be flexible and be patient and not be in a hurry. Because I think, sometimes within the institutions, because we have our goals, we've got our strategic plans, that we feel very hurried because there's so much that we have to respond to within the institution. But sometimes, the most amazing programs happen if you take the time and you intentionally build it, and that you have the stakeholder buy-in, from all of those internally and also externally, that you want to be part of it because you're advancing the equity and support for not only our students, but our students come from the communities that we serve.
Thank you. Joyce?
Um, as someone who's deeply introverted, I will say build the relationships. All the relationships I've built through this process have helped me learn so much. And so when we're talking about authentic community, it comes from the relationships, and also acknowledge that some of our institutions have created hurt. And if we can acknowledge some of the hurt, and if we could build some authentic relationships, then the work is halfway there. And so we will figure out the details. We will figure out some of the logistics. We will figure out so much that we need to figure out. But to me, it really does stem from the relationships and the community. And until we take the time to do that, we really, we really haven't done the work. And so
Mm,
when we do that and we honor one another, and when we acknowledge that we are coming in on equal footing, then a lot of magic can happen through design thinking. Thank you.
thank you. Well, I want to thank our three panelists for sharing your insights and expertise and your time. Um, I think if you are interested in the work, we encourage you to download the brief for a deeper dive into the findings and recommendations. I'm glad that you were able to join us today because I think the conversation today really brought out the sort of like intangible, unspoken need for time, consistency, showing up, trust, relationships, accountability, reciprocity. It that takes time. So I feel like I should go back and edit the brief because it has really good nuts and bolts takeaways of how to do this work, but it doesn't have the like how to build the key underlying all of this, I think, is relationships. I am so grateful to have done this project and to have gotten to know each of you. These are relationships that will stand the test of time. I am excited to see where the project continues to go with the college and with the community. And I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today and for your thoughtful questions. Thank you all so much.